Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent. We're a spiritual community that seeks to be diverse and inclusive as we inspire love, work for justice, and grow together in community. Whoever you are, you're welcome here. Wherever you come from, you're welcome here. And whomever you love, we welcome you. I'm David Weaver, today's worship associate.
This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. This strength that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away.
Bring it down.
This peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it. The world can't take it away.
Oh, this joy that I
have. The world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away.
Now let's take a moment to breathe together. And to enter this time of community again together, to invite the Spirit of life to be present with us as we reflect on the question, why are so many of us so tired? We'll hear from affiliated community minister, Reverend Renee Rahatsky. She will explore with us the work of Tricia Hersey, founder of the NAP Ministry. The book is down front. Tricia invites us to examine grind culture that so often steals our life energy, and we'll consider ways to take back our birthright of rest and dream time. Come, let us worship together.
This morning, I've invited Teresa Venida to light our chalice. This is the anniversary of her father's death, Bo Rotuno. So I invite you to light the chalice while we speak together our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Our first reading this morning is The American Dream by Geraldine Bowen. My father's family had a farm in Oklahoma that was wiped out during the Dust Bowl. They moved to Texas, where my grandmother ran a chicken hatchery and grew vegetables, and my granddad took on odd jobs. Toward the end of the Depression, my grandparents and their 5 children moved again, this time to a mining camp in New Mexico. They lived in a tent while my granddad prospected for gold and didn't find any. At a time when it wasn't considered proper for women to be breadwinners, my grandmother and her oldest daughter somehow managed to buy a house in Albuquerque for the family to live in. They paid the mortgage by renting out 3 apartments that were part of the home. And then they bought large tracts of cheap land on the fringes of the growing city and eventually sold them to developers. My granddad and one of his sons went into the construction business and made a good living during the post-World War II years. They didn't get rich, but my grandparents were eventually comfortable, and all of their children wound up with secure middle-class lives. Even though my granddad thought college was a waste of time and money, my father went. When my little sister and I were toddlers, our parents raised us in a 1-room apartment in my grandparents' house while my father worked his way through college. In time, he became the director of a government research project, and our family moved into a nice 3-bedroom home. From a young age, I got the message that I needed to be a tough competitor to achieve a decent life. In 3rd grade, my class had a spelling bee, the winner of which would have the glory of representing the class in an all-grades super bee. The night before, my father helped me practice by picking words from the dictionary. One of the last of those words was giraffe. I remember going over it and over it again and again before I went to bed. The next day, my stomach was in a twist as one by one my classmates were eliminated from the spelling bee, and I was left to face my last opponent, my cousin, who was like a brother to me. The 2 of us went several rounds, each spelling our words correctly as the tension in the room rose. Then the teacher called out the next word, giraffe. My cousin struggled. My heart turned over when he missed the second F. I calmly spelled the word and became the winner. I was on my way to a bright future. But something immediately felt wrong. In becoming the winner, I'd made my cousin the loser. That feeling has stuck with me, and ever since I've been ambivalent about winning. I've got some self-inflicted losses to show for it. I'm almost as old now as my grandmother when she died, and I can clearly see the shadow side of the American dream. A narrow focus on worldly success as the measure of one's worth. A country that pits its citizens against one another in a hierarchical battle for dominance.
Each week, we set aside time to reflect upon the personal. We may have sorrows, struggles, and losses that are breaking our hearts. We may have joys and celebrations that make our hearts sing. We invite you to come forward as you are able, to choose an item to release into the bowl of water, whether it be a stone, a jewel, a shell, a leaf, or a blossom. If you have filled out a yellow card and haven't turned it in yet, you can bring it forward so that I can share what you have written. If you're on Zoom, you can share any joys or sorrows that you might have in the chat. As I sing together, I will also light our candle of remembrance and hope for our late minister, the Reverend Stephen Protzman, who died unexpectedly on January 29th. May our memory of his ministry and his charge to us to take care of one another give us hope.
What are you longing for? What are you grieving for? What are you thankful for? We're here to listen. What are you longing for? What are you grieving for? What are you thankful for? We're here to listen. Sing with me.
Let us hold in our hearts Camille Pavlivik, who is recovering from knee replacement surgery. Lois and Jennifer ask us to please keep Caitlin Ballinger and her family in our hearts as they adjust to life without Caitlin's mother, Mary Ann. Caitlin is part of our Summer Institute community. For other sorrows and concerns and struggles that are in our hearts, we hold you, we love you, we care for you. We also have things that people in our community are celebrating. Ginny celebrates joy that her daughter took her on a special trip to New York City. Lori and Wendy celebrate that their nephew Keegan is 11 years old today. Bryce shares that a fellow student in their Taekwondo school that they really respected, complimented them on growing into a leader. Kurt celebrates and is happy that God allows him to pursue happiness every day. And Kara and Benjamin from the first service shared their gratitude for this loving and supportive community.
And we respond together. We're here with you. We're here with you. We honor you. And we love you. We're here with you. We honor you. And we love you.
I invite you now into the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, thank you for this glorious, beautiful day. birdsong in the trees, the gurgle of the river flowing downhill from us, the warmth and love of community in this room and in this community beyond this room. We are grateful for one another. We are grateful for this life. We are grateful even when we are struggling, even when we are grieving a loss or feel confused or exhausted. We also know that this is a place where we share our gift of presence with one another, a listening ear, a comforting hand on a shoulder, a glance that says, I see you, I see you. Let us now share silence together as we reflect upon what is in our hearts and in the hearts of one another.
Her second reading is from Rest as Resistance, a Manifesto by Tricia Hersey. A hidden history that is not well known by most in our culture is the story of the American Maroons. This history has been foundational to my understanding of resistance when I began connecting the dots between rest and liberation. The Maroons were Black people navigating the terror of chattel slavery by refusing to be a part of it. For close to 2 centuries, they leaped off of slave ships as they pulled up to the shores of North America to never be seen again. They organized and left plantations for the caves and the deep woods of the South, and they created their own communities outside of the slavery. And they were not fugitives, and instead living in a third space, a temporary place of joy and freedom. They liberated themselves and each other in community, existing in 2 worlds, being in the world of chattel slavery, but not of it. They claimed their autonomy and sovereignty while the violent system of plantation labor raged around them. They told the systems, no, you cannot have me. I don't belong to you. And they embodied this call intensely. When I say I have tapped into the idea of reimagining rest while in a capitalist system, it is because I am inspired by the power of the American Maroons. If there is a required reading for this ministry, I would easily say it's the book Slavery Exiles, The Story of the American Maroons by Sylvain A. Diouf. The book is an intense resource for the ways of resistance. The way the Maroons organized themselves to survive and thrive is breathtaking. The way they created a whole world within an oppressive one to test out their freedom and regain autonomy reminds me of the spiritual and metaphysical ways we must reimagine and shapeshift our own way to intentional rest. It took months for me to begin to wrap my mind around what the Maroons were creating and crafting. They were not runaways, and instead they simply never accepted the role of enslavement and never allowed the plantation to be home. This directly relates to the ways in which I began viewing myself as I continually unravel from grind culture. If we are to find rest right now, while capitalism rages on as a global force, we will have to view ourselves from a different lens. Things will be different. We must act different. We will make choices differently. We will have the opportunity to resist differently and to imagine alternative ways of resting.
A rising tide raises all boats. This was the mantra of the owner of the company that I worked for close to 20 years. A rising tide raises all boats. I heard my supervisor repeat it in his own hope that his hard work toward our company's profitability would result in a raise in his salary. It never did. A rising tide raises all boats? I was told that once I completed the new design and earned the patent, or once I hit a goal on a large project I was managing, I would get the raise and promotion I was promised. The tide rose, my boat did not. But I learned an important lesson. No matter how hard any of us worked, it wouldn't actually result in any significant financial reward. No matter how loyal I was to the management, the feeling was never mutual. They never felt loyal to me. Who was rewarded financially? The handful of managers who were willing to extract as much work and value out of the employees as possible without raising wages. Their loyalty was to the shareholders, or in this case, the small group of private equity investors to whom the profits flowed. I didn't see it clearly at the time, but in retrospect, that is the explanation that seems to align with my experiences working in corporate America. Then I moved into not-for-profit work. No profit, no exploitation of workers, right? Yeah. Not-for-profits are organized around serving their mission, not serving investors. So I couldn't blame the profit motive for driving the culture. But there is still a culture of the workers being tools that should be used up to their fullest potential to fulfill the mission. Instead of the phrase, "a rising tide raises all boats," we were implored to be relentlessly useful. To be honest, I wore the badge of being relentlessly useful with an honor for several years. I believed in the mission of the organization and believed in the difference we were making in the world. But working for good in the world is work that is never done. And how can I take a break when there is so much that is broken and needs our attention? What I am describing is grind culture, a phrase coined by Tricia Hersey, the founder of the NAP ministry. A grinder takes something whole, like a coffee bean or a kernel of corn, and using a combination of pressure and abrasion, pulverizes it into fragments, little small-sized bits that can be more easily consumed. How many of you did that to your coffee this morning? In grind culture, the economy is based in a similar process of taking human beings, animals, ecosystems, you name it, and using a combination of pressure and abrasion pulverizes us into something fragmented and easily consumed. Friends, we are like the proverbial frog in a pot of water where the heat has been increasing for generations. There was a generation where white middle-class Americans wore grind culture as a badge of honor. It is the path of the American dream, with men as breadwinners and women as homemakers with big longs and time-saving appliances, followed by retirement in a Sunbelt state. The heat increased, and then the culture demanded two-income families to afford higher costs for food and housing and college. and to pay for time-saving services like childcare and lawn care, but with that savings of time consumed by working more. Retirement benefits dried up and retirement age slowly increased so that people were forced to continue to work. At the same time, our expectations have been shaped to expect that we will work until we are no longer useful. In other words, there is nothing left to use up. Just recently, my spouse and I were consulting with a CPA, and he told my spouse that he was too young to be retired, even though he's legally eligible for retirement benefits. The heat has continued to rise, with grind culture demanding more productivity with less reward. We now have the gig economy and loosened child labor laws. Our bodies are stressed and sleep deprived. All of the perks that were promised in the American dream, affordable housing, health care, generous vacation, retirement at an age where we can still enjoy it, are mostly gobbled up, demanded by shareholders and private equity investors to increase their profits. In her book, Rest is Resistance, a manifesto, there's a copy up there in the chancel, NAP Ministry Bishop Tricia Hersey draws a direct line between what we are experiencing today and the plantation economy. She writes, "Grind culture is a collaboration between capitalism and white supremacy. Capitalism is from the plantation. Our current system of labor was made from this paradigm. Knowing this shifted me and must be acknowledged as part of our deprogramming process from grind culture. It is a painful realization, but one we must confront to find our way to healing. What does it feel like to hold this knowledge and to understand you're unconsciously and consciously participating in a system that had its foundation in viewing human bodies as non-human machines? What is grind culture doing to our spiritual, mental, and physical health? How does it feel to know your human body is viewed by a capitalist and ableist culture as existing only to make profit? For us to not view our own bodies or the bodies of others as divine, as a divine dwelling, the site of liberation and a miracle, is to bow down to the dominant oppressive culture." I highly recommend the book. So the message this morning is not coming from someone who has this figured out. Far from it. I am as immersed in grind culture as anyone. But I do know this: the path for us frogs out of the scalding pot of water is the path of solidarity and collective liberation. But that path needs to start with an internal shift in each one of us. Hersey reminds us that a politics of refusal is an ancient tactic. The stories of the Maroons from our reading, those captured Africans who were able to refuse the fate of chattel slavery and live in a world of their own making and agency, are just one historic example of humans walking away from oppressive systems. A politics of refusal is an ancient tactic, but it is not an easy tactic, because the paradigm we live in, the simmering pot, is structurally rigged to keep us stuck in grind culture. There is always a sense of urgency, of scarcity, of going it alone. We saw this during the pandemic. This mindset has drowned out our inner voice, the voice that enables us to connect to the wisdom of our bodies, our intuition, our spiritual nature that tells us that we are enough. How can we imagine freedom when we are exhausted? Hersey's NAP ministry offers the gift of resistance, of liberation. We know that our employers and their stockholders are not going to give us permission to rest. Vagrancy laws and laws against loitering tell us which side the politicians are on. We need to be subversive, inventive, disruptive. A politics of refusal is an ancient tactic, but it also can be a quite effective one. We've seen recent countercultural phenomena like quiet quitting show up, puzzling employers about how to respond. We have seen Tang Ping happening in China, which literally means choosing to lie down flat and get over the beatings. Hersey's book, Rest as Resistance, is the foundation and the theory. Her ministry, the nap ministry, is the practice. Like with any practice, a description of it or a discussion about it pales in comparison to the experience of the actual practice itself. The nap ministry begins with healing work, starting with our spirits, our souls, to reclaim our birthright of ease and rest. We need to tap into our imagination and return to what our bodies and spirit already know, that this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. One place that we might start is with the Nap Ministry's Meditations for Rest. Let's explore them together. I invite you to find a position or a posture where you feel supported and comfortable. There's a space up here on the rug that Coyote's enjoying, that there's a little bit more space up here if you want to join them. And if there's room in your pew to spread out or lay down your head, please do so. I deserve rest now. I am worthy of rest. I am not lazy. How could I be lazy? My ancestors were too brilliant for that. Capitalism wants my body to be a machine. I am not a machine. I am a magical and divine human being. I have the right to resist grind culture. I don't have to deserve or earn rest. I do not have to earn rest. As I do less, watch how I thrive. Ease is my birthright. And finally, I will rest. I will rest. I will rest. Earlier this morning, as part of our adult reflection circles, we asked the question, how might we create individual and collective rituals of rest and healing for ourselves and our communities? One place to look is human history, not the history that is written down in books that tells the story of empire and colonization, but the history of when Western civilization meets indigenous culture. During the colonization of this continent by Europeans, there were hundreds of examples of people who fled the white settlements to live with the indigenous people, or who were captured by the indigenous people, were rescued, but then escaped to return to the indigenous life. This is because those indigenous communities did not have the exploitative and extractive nature of the colonies and offered a lot more time for leisure and pleasure. Even though I said that resistance to grind culture needs to start with an internal shift in each of us, it is just one step on the path of solidarity and collective liberation. Grind culture keeps us in a state of perpetual hypervigilance and chronic anxiety. It's hard to sleep when you're in a state of anxiety. And it's harder to dream of the possible or to imagine a better way when we feel the weight of the world upon our bodies, upon our muscles and bones. I think this is part of our work as a religious community, to support one another as we resist the grind and return to wholeness. We can practice patience when waiting for a response to an email. We can honor the scheduled days off of our staff. We can avoid talking about church business with our leaders when they are at worship or other activities where their spirits are being nurtured. At the UUA National Office where I work, we are trying to change our culture. Both the book and the ministry deck and the chancel were given to every person on staff as part of that culture change. And I do see that how our culture is shifting at headquarters. For example, we aren't really allowed to send things outside of working hours anymore. So as I mentioned before, I am not someone who has this figured out. But I do know that I am at my best when I am well rested. One reason I was able to be grounded and present after I learned about our minister's recent passing was that I had just returned from 2 weeks away from my daily grind, which is unusual to take that much time off. And I do have time scheduled off this week to rest. My invitation to you is that we practice together, that we figure this out together as we face the coming season of changes and challenges. Ease is our birthright, friends. Let it be so, and blessed be. Our spiritual community thrives in its shared life of worship, community, and ministry as each of us participates in the circle of giving and receiving. This is possible due to your generous gifts of money, time, and care for each other, and the recognition that we are all connected. There are many ways to give. You can write a check or put cash into a pew envelope with your name. You can use the QR code in the pews or the link on the screen. And there are also cards in the pews for electronic givers and those giving in other ways that you can drop into the basket. Our ushers also have NAP ministry bookmarks with the meditation that I shared, so I invite you to take one of those. To help others in our community thrive, we also give to agencies and organizations in Kent and beyond that serve those in need. This February's offering is for the American Civil Liberties Union. In the spirit of gratitude for the gift of one another in this community and the abundance that makes generosity possible, we now give and receive the offering.
All right, this is also participatory. This is a lovely song by Ali Halpert. She's a beautiful Jewish musician, very spiritual, and she speaks to this same topic. Let's all get started together. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Part 2. Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy
Please join with me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the light of community, or the fire of commitment. May we carry these in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn is number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do. It's a zipper song, and we've inserted some appropriate words for our theme. Our benediction is from the Reverend Heather Ryan Starr. And after I picked it, I read that they wrote this benediction for Super Bowl Sunday, so that was serendipitous. To soulfully survive the world's mayhem, may whatever gatherings or activities we engage in this Sunday afternoon help restore us, our connections to one another, our sense of hope, beauty, and fun in this world, our deep knowing that we have to take care of ourselves and each other with love and joy if we are to soulfully survive the world's mayhem. May it be so, and amen.